This presentation visualises and reveals the significance of connectedness and professional identity formation within professional group ecologies that exist in creative fields of practice. This collaborative research is being completed by PhD candidate Meg Long with Associate Professor Kim Snep-Vanges and Associate Professor Ariane Rourke at the University of New South Wales, Faculty of Art and Design in Sydney, Australia. This is an interdisciplinary study that aligns creative approaches to revealing international student professional practices in social media contexts. Before we begin our presentation, we would like to acknowledge the Bedegal, Gadigal and Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional custodians of the lands where each campus of UNSW is located. We would also like to pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who may also be present here for this event. The following slides and commentary will give an overview of connectedness approaches in the creative industries context in Australia, unpack the concepts of connectedness and professional identity in the digital ecologies space, where social media has become the conduit. Lastly, we will present the notion of an ecologies framework metaphor and how it can be used to understand international student needs for graduate employability. For this study, it was important to understand how professional relationships form in the art and design professional context, so research was completed in the creative industries literature. The diversity of professional situations in the creative industries field are described by academic Ruth Bridgestock as being fluid and highly competitive, making continued and sustainable employment difficult. For the creative industries professional, knowledge is propelled by social interaction in communities that are networked, quote, where academic knowledge mixes and negotiates with specialist knowledge, Communion 2015. This affiliation of knowledge transfer, creativity and the economy has brought together literature that debates how students should be connected to successfully access creative innovation, entrepreneurial and enterprise skills, and an entrepreneurial mindset. These skills have been identified by Australian scholars Bridgestock 2013, Daniel and Daniel 2015, and Pollard and Wilson 2013 as specific professional attributes needed by students intending to build a professional identity and work in this often fast-paced and shifting field. It was also evident in the literature that the art and design professional environment characteristically follows, quote, non-linear pathways that are driven by the individual through projects, other self-devised activities and informal networks. Daniel and Daniel 2015. These informal social arrangements exist when artists and designers network in groups or as individual workers within small and micro businesses. Craytie and Thomas 2001. Connectedness in these arrangements is regularly established and re-established, often through collaborative projects, while the professional art and design identity is built over a long period of time. In the existing and constantly evolving digital culture, participation is key, and users connect, communicate, collaborate, and create via cloud sharing and online platforms. Networks are generated through popular social interfaces like Facebook, Twitter, and WeChat. Connections and social ties are made by, quote, norms and practices of understood sociality, Myers, Erickson and Small 2013. The notion of a network self is coined by Australian scholar Mark Pegram as it emerges as a characteristic of a new network literacy where the internet provisions the intensification of connectivity in the networked society, the networked economy, and networked individualism. Pegram cleverly uses the pun, I link, therefore I am, to unpack the dimensions of network literacy and how it relates to connectedness. He states, your influence depends on your degree of connectedness. Your connectedness not only impacts your ability to make your voice heard, but more importantly, to direct flows of information, link people together, and further expand your own connection. Pegram advocates that there needs to be equilibrium with personal identity and social connections. In particular, he identifies students as individuals which must learn to ethically shape, navigate, and curate multiple networks by learning to blend, to disentangle, as required, the social, the educational, and the professional. This process of ethical identity formation establishes that we exist within a culture of directing multiple identities across many-to-many connections through networks presented to us in virtual connections made in social media environments. These environments require the individual to exercise a certain kind of network agility approach to interacting with groups and lively and organically connected communities. Social network agility, McWilliams and Dawson 2008, is underpinned by connections that lead to the formation of associations in a social arrangement. Knowing how to negotiate these relationships is increasingly becoming a very important attribute. Connectedness could start to be conceived here as a practice that must be learnt, continuous and sustained, and is intertwined with how we manage, form and present our identities within group associations or relationships. Ecologies as a network and their arrangement in digital spaces became the emphasis of the theoretical framework of the study. In scientific terms, ecologies are the study of the relationships between living things and their environment. Joseph Needham in Science and Civilization in China, 1956, describes the meaning of the Chinese term li to, quote, reflect the order and pattern in nature. Not pattern thought of as something dead like a mosaic. It is dynamic pattern as embodied in all living things and in human relationships. In 1982, Fritjof Capra set out 3 criteria of living systems. The first, and most relevant to this study again, references the pattern of organisation and the configuration of relationships as essential characteristics of an ecology. The ecologies as a network metaphor is understood in this research study as belonging to networks and structures inside online spaces found within social media contexts. Of interest is how connections are made, sustained, and used for employment. Visualising the dynamic patterns of international students in online environments has become the focus. Social media and network technologies are underpinned by digital profiling, sharing, networking, and connectivity. In these online environments, international students could encounter academic, professional, and informal uses of social media. Some authors have referred to this space as a digital social ecosystem, where the social network is distinguished by a social structure that consists of nodes and ties between these nodes. Boskert and 2016. For individuals, the digital social ecosystem offers the space for connectedness and interactivity to occur, while also giving opportunity to manage an individual's identity for a variety of purposes. These could be personal, educational, and professional. Quote, individuals are able to create multiple identities, edit, delete, and then recreate identities. Because these environments can function as ecologies, they allow social interaction and let these identities influence and be influenced by others. Boskert and 2016. Digital social ecosystems also encourage the development of a space for social learning, often with and through informal channels. Selwyn, 2009. It could be helpful to extend the ecologies metaphor here to include the concepts of learning ecologies as a, quote, productive framework for observing and analysing interactions between people and their environment, their experiences across different contexts, and participation in diverse communities. Mania and Garcia, 2016. Mania and Garcia present current definitions in literature that define learning ecologies to include information ecologies, temporal and spatial ecologies, creation of communities ecologies, formal learning ecologies, e-learning and e-learning design ecologies, and ecologies of practice. These definitions provide for the diverse uses and understandings of ecologies in learning literature. Mania and Garcia also assert that learning ecologies are shaped by mobile, social, and network technologies, often blurring the boundaries between formal and informal learning. Technology then becomes the vehicle where adaptable learning practices can exist. This is an important application of social media channels like Twitter, Facebook, and WeChat, as these online spaces become the conduit between forming relationships, learning and developing a presence within a community. Making the correlation between digital social ecosystems and the learning ecologies metaphor develops a deeper understanding of the practices social media can afford informal social learning experiences. While the ecologies metaphor was helpful in identifying the context and how connectivity can occur in the digital setting, a theory of the ecologies of practice was examined as a possible lens to uncover the connections and the professional identity formation practices of international students. Practice theories are diverse and include varied perspectives and emphasis. Theorists such as Bordeaux, Latour, Ingold, and Schatzky focus on the ways individuals relate with others through objects, activities, discourse, and environments. This type of practice theory is entrenched in social interaction and could be quantified as lived experiences. Chemist, 2014. Schatzky maintained that practices are encompassed by distinct arrangements or doings and a discourse of sayings. Stephen Kemmis and his research associates expand Schatzky's theory to include the concept of relatings as they are embedded in a site or environment. Relatings are the relationship between people, but Kemmis states, we are accustomed to thinking about the relationships between practices in terms of relationships between the biological entities, i.e. people, who relate to one another in practices, but less familiar with thinking about the relationship between practices themselves. In developing Schatzky's philosophical theory, Kemmis and colleagues have coined the term ecologies of practice. They further describe the possibilities of these ecological relationships within Capra's concepts of networks, nested systems, interdependence, diversity, cycles, flows, development, and dynamic balance. Networks, for example, is described as, quote, different practices would derive their essential properties and their existence from their relationships with other practices. The ecologies of practice conceptions are useful for this study as a lens to design and analyse ways of visually revealing the professional practices of international students in social media environments. Ecologies of practice is appropriated typically from scientific research. The term ecology and ecologies of practice are contemporary educational phrases used to describe new dynamics between the arts, humanities, and the hard sciences concerning big issues in current society. The concept of ecology is used in this context as a network of interconnected processes and events that inform the learning environment. The concept of ecologies of practice, Kemmis and Heikkinen, 2014, is referred to within pre-service teacher education contexts as a conceptual development beyond the notion of their earlier term, practice architectures. Kemmis and Heikkinen describe novice stages in a professional career as a set of practices, which are made possible through particular practice architectures that support them. The building blocks required when moving from student to professional involve interconnected experiences and procedures planned to enable novice practitioners to understand complexity. As this conference focuses on the image and provoking thinking through the visual by way of encounters, place, ecologies, and design, this research study then embeds the notion of ecologies within the context of professional online groups and spaces, where digital encounters take place in systems like social media. Visualizing connectedness in these spaces is a key motivation of the research methodology. Isolating and interpreting the actions of international student lived experiences in ways that would reveal practices through images. In our current world, where we are increasingly relying on connectivity through digital means, our networks and ever-evolving identity become embodied in the encounters we now have online. Establishing and maintaining professional group ecologies requires an understanding of connectedness capabilities and professional identity formation. The potential impact of this study is for new conceptions of meaningful engagement of connectedness and sustained professional identity practices to be revealed.